What's up, Run 50 States My Way? It's Ashley. When in the Alabama area, northern Alabama area, you're only about 45 minutes to an hour from Huntsville to Lynchburg, Tennessee. So of course, we took a day trip up to Lynchburg where we're going to go to the Jack Daniel's Distillery, see the little town, and of course, you cannot come to Lynchburg without stopping for lunch at Miss Mary Bobo's boarding house. So we're going to go into Miss Mary Bobo's first, have an amazing southern lunch, and see all that there is to see here in Lynchburg. Like, subscribe, and comment down below. And we're really excited to show you what you can do in Lynchburg.
And out of nowhere, I don't even know where he saw that. Where did you see that? I just heard it.
And this is a picture of Miss Mary Bobo herself. The dining room at Miss Mary Bobo's boarding house. Each room is set up to where you sit family style, and they're going to bring out a smorgasbord of yummy things. Each room at Miss Mary Bobo's boarding house is separated and named. When you check in, you are given a little tag that tells you what room you are going to come to. This boarding house literally is huge. You can tell that Miss Mary Bobo really did, back in the day, love feeding people, and this experience is just awesome. It really reminds me of a place in Savannah called Mrs. Wilkes Boarding House. Served the same way, all family style, around a table. You wait for your dinner bell. There are 3 different dining times. We are, of course, doing the first one at 11. The next dining time is at 1, and I believe they do another dining time right after at 3. There's the dinner bell, so now we can go on in. Inside our room in Jasper, we got country ham and biscuits and mac and cheese and green beans and sweet potatoes and okra and chicken and stuffing and apples. Oh my. My overflowing plate with chicken and dressing, cranberry relish, Jack Daniel's sweet potatoes, okra, ham, green beans, mac and cheese, and Jack Daniel's apples. Yum. So because we're eating amongst new friends, we did not video when we were eating our delicious lunch here at Miss Mary Bobo's, but I can tell you I had 2 plates and still went in for more okra. The best fried okra I've ever had. And even Ryan liked it, and he doesn't even like okra. The ham steak was delicious. It wasn't country ham, it was like a baked ham. It was if you can think of like the best holiday dinner you've ever had, that's what this was. The apples with the Jack Daniels, to die for. Everything was delicious. The mac and cheese, the green beans, the sweet potatoes with the Jack Daniels kiss. Again, amazing. But probably my favorite were the apples and the fried okra. The green beans, the mac and cheese, all of it. I would definitely come back here, and I'm really looking forward to dessert. I had to hold back to save room. So stay tuned. That's up next. My fingers were crossed, my toes were crossed, and now I'm really excited to report that our dessert for the day is my personal favorite, which comes out of this area of the South, and it is called chess pie.
And the silence means it's good.
And the silence at the table means it's good. Chess pie, for those who don't know what it is, it's a custard pie with eggs and sugar and butter, a little bit of cornmeal, and some other yummy things that go into it. Potentially a little bit of lemon, we're going to find out.
Well, vanilla.
Vanilla? Mm-hmm.
If you don't have vanilla, a little jack is okay too.
A little jack is okay when you don't have the vanilla.
Oh, I'm going to try that.
That sounds tasty.
Get the vanilla.
And I think the whipped cream has Jack Daniels in it too. Oh yes, it does. Excellent. I'm so happy that we're having chess pie for dessert. The perfect way to end a perfect holiday meal at Miss Mary Bobo's. So one of the great things about Miss Mary Bobo's is that you do pay when you make the reservation. It was about $30 per dinner. My dad couldn't come because he wasn't feeling good, and they're sending him with a to-go container of all of the yummy things so that he still gets to eat his southern lunch for dinner. On our way out, we have to come underneath the house, which takes us right past the Roundtree Spring and Cistern. Pioneers were first lured to Lynchburg because of the abundance of fresh water, and Thomas Roundtree settled here in 1800s. The spring provided a ready source of water for drinking and cooking and cleaning, as well as natural refrigeration. Eventually, the spring that drew pioneers would give birth to Lynchburg's leading industry, making whiskey, because you need whiskey, or you need water. You need water to make whiskey. We loved it here at Miss Mary Bobo's, and we can't wait to go and explore the rest of Lynchburg. Downtown Lynchburg is literally just this little square. Goes around in a circle with lots of cute little shops. First one we're going to go into is the Moon Pie General Store. All things moon pie.
Oh, look at that.
Including, look at these little onesies, My Little Moon Pie.
Oh, not that.
The Jack Daniel's Lynchburg Hardware General Store is your gift shop where you can get all things Jack Daniel's, including seeing old Jack himself playing checkers right outside. But why I wanted to come here was to see all the fun stuff made out of the barrels, including barrel planters. We'll go in and see if we can film and show you all the cool things that you can get. All the different drinkware and shot glasses. Lynchburg lemonade. Flasks. All types of goodies. This side of the store is all of the fun shirts. Black is definitely the color of choice here in Lynchburg. This is the part of the store I was most excited for. This is where everything is made out of barrels.
If you're going barbecue, I personally prefer barrel house.
Oh, look at the barrel bar. $275 for the barrel bar. This one's cute. It's a half a bar. That would fit better. $226. There's the chair. And the stools. Table. Oh, look at this bar. Awesome. Absolutely love this little chair bench made out of a barrel. Okay, so for inquiring minds, these planters here are $80. The little planters are $30. And the unfinished planters, which are right here, are $49.99 or $50. They will ship, but shipping is more than the barrel costs to purchase to get it home. And unfortunately, we don't have room in our car. But Santa Claus, I would love a barrel. I just can't get it home. The candy store has a whole bunch of different taffies. Old-timey candies.
It's not really for me.
And homemade fudge made with the whiskey.
Let's do 2 white chocolate butter butters.
You can even get it served in a shot glass. Lynchburg might be a dry county. You might not be able to drink the whiskey, but every one of these restaurants, candy shops, ice cream parlors, they've all figured out the loophole to the rule. We've seen whiskey fudge, whiskey ice cream, and at Miss Mary Bobo's we had whiskey apples. So you can cook it, you just can't drink it. We saved the best stop for last because when you're in Lynchburg, you have to come to the oldest operating distillery in the United States, Jack Daniel's in Lynchburg. And there's the spring, because you can't make good whiskey without good water. This is the visitor center, right on the spring. And because we're here in December, this is really cool. You can see it. They built a Christmas tree out of barrels. We're gonna go check in for our tour, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some footage of our experience on our tasting tour, but we'll have to wait and see. There are a variety of different tours that you can take. The one is the Dry County tour for $20, no sampling. You do get to see the grounds. Then there's the Flight of Jack for $30. You sample the most popular whiskey and tour the grounds. The one we're taking is the Angel Share tour for $35, where we get to sample Jack Daniel's single barrel collection and limited edition whiskeys along with seeing the grounds. Now, because my mom is disabled, we are going to do a modified tour that doesn't take us into production, because for those of you who do have mobility issues, that tour has about 175 stairs. So be aware that it is about a quarter of a mile walking as well as 175 stairs. So if you do need handicap, make sure you mention it. Inside of the visitor center is a really nice little museum that you can explore while you're waiting to take your tour. I absolutely love that bottle.
Well, it ain't happening.
Wow.
You could have gotten it $277.
$277.
25 years ago.
That one's pretty too. Prohibition era. Oh my gosh, look at this old cash register made out of gold or bronze. Jack Daniel's clothes with his little hats. He was skinny. Gentleman Jack.
It's sold anywhere in the world. It's made right here in a dry county. More county they went actually went dry in 1909. We've been dry ever since. There's not a pub or a liquor store anywhere in this county. But I can tell you, we do have a few exceptions to these Moore County rules, because we have some excellent lawyers, to be honest with you, who work for us. The first, and you're actually privy to the first, because we, quote, give educational tours, we have a special permit that allows us to give tastings with those educational tours. Now, the second is the White Rabbit Bottle Shop. You can go into the bottle shop that's located in the Visitor Center. You can purchase a souvenir bottle of Jack Daniel's. Whiskey inside that bottle is absolutely free. You're just simply paying for that souvenir bottle, believe it or not. So that's what good lawyers will do for you. Our corn comes from North Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Most all of our rye comes from Canada. I'm told we do get some from Minnesota from time to time, but the bulk comes from Canada. Barley, North and South Dakota, and Montana. So, now, first stop here, this is going to be the Rickyard. We're fixing to get off here in just a minute. This is actually what makes this Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. This step, this process that we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Oh, didn't drink. This is where we make charcoal that we use for our charcoal filtering process. And around here, we actually refer to this step as the extra blessing that we give our whiskey, because it's this step that defines us as Tennessee whiskey and separates us from the bourbon category. You see, we follow every one of the guidelines that it takes to be a bourbon, but we don't have bourbon on our label. And the reason for that is this step. By law, you cannot put Tennessee whiskey on your label if you don't use the charcoal filtering process. So I guess the easiest way to describe it, if somebody were going to ask, what's the difference between Tennessee whiskey and bourbon? The answer is simple. It's charcoal. If we did not use the charcoal filtering process, we'd be Jack Daniel's bourbon. That's what you'd see on our label. But because we add this in addition to those other steps that it takes to be a bourbon, we actually earn the right by law to call ourselves a Tennessee whiskey. Now we still do everything exactly the same way Jack did it. Biggest difference, we can make a whole lot more whiskey today than Jack was able to make. We got technology and resources that did not exist when Jack was alive. So that's the biggest difference.
So why did he decide to do the charcoal thing and as opposed to just regular bourbon? From taste?
Well, he learned it as a young boy.
Okay.
And if you could hold on about 5 minutes, we'll actually go through, I'll explain the story of how he actually learned how to make whiskey. So if you'll notice each one of the pallets that are out there behind us, each one of those pallets contain what we call a rick of hard sugar maple wood. So when we do burn, we actually burn 4 ricks at a time. Now, I will tell you this, to start those fires, we use only 140 proof moonshine that comes straight from one of our distilleries. So that is the only accelerant we use because we don't want any foreign taste or smell affecting our whiskey in any way. I actually have some in that spray bottle right there. If you'd like, I'll spray some on your hands here in just a minute.
Yes.
There's actually 5 ingredients that make every single product that we have here. Corn, barley, rye, Cave Spring water, and our own proprietary yeast. That is it. Jack's grain bill, we still use the exact same grain bill today. 80% corn, 12% barley, 8% rye. So when I do spray it on your hands, if you're rubbing smell, should be able to smell some of that sweetness from the corn in that grain bill. Let's see what we got here. Don't y'all let me forget my umbrella, just in case we need it later.
Woo, baby.
So,
Ooh, that'll get you high. That's hand sanitizer
Yes.
from nature right there.
absolutely. Yes, that 140 proof, I'm told, will kill all the germs that you've got. So that's
Yep.
a COVID.
COVID killer.
COVID killer. Right?
COVID killer.
Now, actually, this video shows the process. It's a 2-hour process total. Now, once the fire starts, it'll burn for an hour and a half. At that point, they'll start to cool it down using a handheld water hose. And this is where the art really comes in. Too much water too fast, you'll end up with big wet chunks of wood you can't use. Too little water too late, you'll simply end up with ashes. When our guys get through with the process, it's going to end up about the size of a golf ball. If that size is still a little too large, the whiskey would hit, roll over and around it. We need it to filter down and through the charcoal. So we're going to take that golf ball sized charcoal, put it in a grinder that we've got next door, grind it up. When it comes out of there, it's going to be about the size of a pea. If that size is going to be perfect for that charcoal filtering process we're using it for. This vat right here is actually a finished product. So this is a sample of what we're going to see when we go into the charcoal mellowing house here in about 35. Whoops, we're not going to be going into the charcoal mellowing house, sorry. I'll explain that when we get right here in just a minute. But that's the size of that charcoal that's in each one of those charcoal mellowing vats. Actually, while we're talking about that, before I go on, so this is a model of one of our charcoal mellowing vats right here. So each one of the vats in that charcoal mellowing house are 14 foot tall, and each one has 10 feet of charcoal. So we actually have a total of 72 of those charcoal mellowing vats in that building.
I'm sorry.
Now, it takes about 2 days for a drop of whiskey to get from the top of that charcoal down through that 10 feet of charcoal to the bottom of that vat. So during that 2-day process, the charcoal, the whiskey as it's working its way down through the charcoal absorbs the corn oils, the fatty acids, and bitterness that's in that whiskey. So after that 2 days, when it's down to the bottom, it's still 140 proof, and it's still just as clear as water. Now, I told you we use all the specs to be a bourbon. So because of that, it has to go into the barrel at 125 proof, and it has to be aged in new white oak barrels. That is key. So we're going to take that 140 proof at the bottom of that vat. We're going to use deionized water, cut it to 125 proof. Then we're going to put it in a new white oak barrel and then place it into the barrel house. As soon as it gets placed in the barrel house, it's happy birthday at that point. It's a Tennessee whiskey for the rest of its life once it gets into the barrel house. About 80% of our used barrels actually go to Scotland and Ireland for Scotch and Irish whiskey. They love aging their whiskeys in our used barrels. Some go to Canada for rye, some go to Jamaica for rum. Louisiana Hot Sauce uses our barrels as well to cure their hot sauce in. We've actually got some craft breweries that are using them now to finish off beers, some wineries that are finishing off wines with them as well. So they go to a lot of different places. Now, I will tell you this, we're about 98, 99% reusable, recyclable around here, so we just don't waste. So most of that old charcoal, some of it goes to a company in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. They'll repackage it as smoking pellets. The rest of it goes to a company in Georgia. They'll repackage it as charcoal briquettes. So you can find both of those at your local hardware store. So the charcoal doesn't last forever. On average, it's about 10 to 12 months. And then once it gets so saturated it stops absorbing, that's when we'll change it out. We have actually that big John Deere tractor right there. We've got I-beams inside that building. It'll wheel right up on those I-beams, has a vacuum, sucks all the little charcoal out, then it'll come back and dump a fresh 10 feet of charcoal in. So Jack didn't start on this property. Jack didn't come here to this location until he was in his early 30s. He actually learned how to make whiskey about 5 miles down the road from here on Dan Call's farm. You see, Jack was the youngest of 10 children. Shortly after he was born, his mother passed away. Well, the story goes that his daddy remarries. Jack and his stepmom did not get along well together. So somewhere around the age of 7 or 8 years old, Jack decides he's going to leave home. He does. Within a year after leaving home, he comes to work and live with the Call family on their farm. Dan Call actually knew the family Jack had been living with. When he came to visit one day, he sees Jack running around in the yard, basically. He inquires, well, he invites Jack to come live with him because he needed the help over at his place. See, Dan had a farm and he had a general store, so Jack worked both of those on a daily basis once he started living there. Dan was also a full-time Lutheran minister, so he had a congregation he was concerned with also. Well, he also had a still on that property, and Jack immediately became interested in that still once he started living there with the family. But now this is before the Civil War, so the day-to-day care of that Call still was actually entrusted to an enslaved man named Nathan Nearest Green. And so it was actually Nearest who was the one that brought Jack in, worked side by side with Jack to teach him what would prove to be his life's passion. So the reason we use that charcoal filtering process today is because Jack as a kid learned that from Nearest Green. That's how he learned to make whiskey, was from Nearest. And Nearest used that process when he was making his whiskey. So that's where it starts from for Jack. Now I told you the water was cold, but it's also iron-free. Iron-free water is absolutely essential if you want good whiskey. If iron's in your water, your whiskey's going to end up having a bitter taste, and that beautiful amber color that our whiskey's got, the iron will turn into a dull grayish black color. And the Tennessee limestone here is key. Much of this area is actually built on these limestone shelves that you see here. As that water seeps down into the shelves, the limestone filters the iron out of the water. At the same time, it actually adds minerals back into the water that contribute to the flavor and the character of our whiskey.
So it's never dried up?
No, ma'am. We keep your fingers crossed. We hope not.
Has anyone tried to go in there?
Well, actually, the mouth of this spring, our source, where the water originally comes from, is a little over a mile deep. We actually pump our water about midway, about 200 yards in. We have an aquifer there. We actually have a small dam that kind of pulls the water up, so it's actually a small pond, if you were to be able to see it. So we'll actually pump from that aquifer. From there into the first building we're actually going to go into, right behind those 12 silos. So you can see the steps where they're going up. That's the first building we're going to go into. That's where fermentation and distillation occurs. So that water is actually pumped up into that building and where we use it to create our mash. Now we only use about a third of the output that we got coming from that spring. So we got a whole lot of excess water, I guess you'd call it. So all the water that you see here, this is all excess. This is all water that does not get used. It's also a combination because we've had a lot of rain. Rainwater filters down in through here as well, and it feeds into this creek. Now all this excess water, we have pipes underneath that limestone. It goes through those pipes. Right around the corner here, there's a still pond over on the other side. I'll show you that still pond when we get around my dad's statue. So we also use this water for cleaning and maintenance as well. So once we use it for cleaning and maintenance, we have a filtration system that goes through. Filters through there, goes back into the still pond. The still pond dumps it back into the creek, and the creek runs all the way down the tour path. This is the start of it. From here, it runs all the way down the path, back in front of the visitor center, feeds into Mulberry Creek. Mulberry Creek feeds into the Elk River. So the ultimate destination of all this water that you see here, it ends up in the Elk River by way of Mulberry Creek. So, now we barrel, I told you we only use about a third. On average, about 110,000 gallons of that water every day we use to make our mash.
So legend says that the still was kept up there in that little hidey hole.
And he would have, actually, I talk about the water being iron-free. Another very, very important factor about that water being cold, 56 degrees, Jack didn't have our technology. The yeast, you can't let the yeast, if it gets above 98 degrees, it will start to die. You can't let that happen. If the yeast dies, you don't have fermentation. So Jack could use that 56 degree water, run it back through there, cool that yeast back down, so he can continue the fermentation process.
I love it. I hope that that is true, because that would be the perfect spot to hide a still.
That would be awesome.
Be a little tricky getting up there, but you could do it.
This crew right here was made around 1904. There's Jack right there in the center. He's wearing the white hat. The interesting thing about that picture is the man seated to Jack's right. That was Jack's best friend. It's George Green, the son of Nearest, who was Jack's mentor. When Jack established Distillery, he hired Nearest to be his head distiller. When he comes here to the cave spring, he asked Nearest to come with him. Nearest declined because he was much older by this time, did not want to make a 5-mile trip every day to do something he'd virtually done his whole life. So he basically tells Jack, look, I'm going to retire. I'm going to stay back on the Call farm. So he does. Instead, Jack brings 2 of Nearest's sons. He brings Eli and his best friend George. So in the 150 plus years since Jack and Nearest started making whiskey together, there's always been a member of the Green family and Jack's family working side by side here at this distillery. Family has always been extremely important to us here. We actually think it's the best means of quality control. That's why still today we have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th generational employees on both sides of those families still actively working side by side here today. Last numbers I was told somewhere between 60 and 65% of our employees are generational employees.
Jack and his friend.
Everything that you see here, this is all original. Of course, the Christmas tree, not, and of course the lights and some of the newer pictures. But all the other stuff in here, this is everything that Jack and Lim used on a day-to-day basis. So this is the only building that predates Prohibition on this property. Now, Lim started working with Jack when he was 17 years old. He was an excellent businessman, so he did all the bookwork around here. He was always the first one here at the office. He'd open up this safe, he'd get the bookwork out, and he'd start the distillery for the day. Jack was the original salesman and marketer. Always stayed out late at night, and he always came in later in the day. He actually owned 2 saloons in the town square. He was at virtually every night selling and marketing his product. Well, one morning in 1905, Jack decided he wanted to get here early. Wanted to get something out of the safe, get out of town, and get back in town before it got dark that day. So he beats Lim here. Well, he comes in, tries to open up the safe. Very rarely did he ever do that anymore. Well, he forgets the combination. Well, out of frustration, he yells off and kicks it. Breaks his big toe on his left foot.
This is what killed him.
About 5 minutes later, Lim comes in at his normal time. Of course, he opens it right up because he did it every single day. Well, Jack gets through and he needs out and he hobbles on off. He hobbles around on that foot for months, never says anything or does anything
angry,
about
and
it.
that's what killed him.
So he just assumed that the pain was going to go away, but it doesn't. Eventually, the pain gets so severe that he's got to go see the doctor. When he gets there, the doctor confirmed that he had broken the toe, but that's no longer the issue. Jack had waited so long that gangrene had now set into that foot. So over the course of about a 6-year period, Jack endures amputation after amputation. First the toe, then the foot, eventually just below the knee. Finally, one last ditch effort to try to save his life, they cut his leg off just below the hip. But it's no use. 1911, Jack eventually dies of blood poisoning and complications. It all started about 6 years earlier from kicking that safe right there. So that's our murder weapon.
Moral of the story, when you're pissed off, don't kick something that's going to break your foot.
You're exactly right. Now, I tell you, that's probably, don't kick the safe. That's probably it. I will tell you, the moral of that story that you do try to live by around here. Don't ever go into work early because it just might kill you. So. Go ahead and try your old number 7. It should taste and look just like the last time you had it.
Yep, it's just a simple whiskey.
It's the whiskey to penetrate deeper into the pores of that wood. Well, that's naturally going to create a more full-bodied whiskey that has a much bolder character than our number 7 is going to have. So that's where our single barrel whiskeys come from, only from the top level of a 7-story barrel house. Minimum 5.5 to 6 years maturation life before they're pulled and bottled as a single barrel whiskey. But now here's one of the keys. Only about 1 out of every 100 barrels are considered unique enough to be pulled and bottled as a single barrel whiskey. Those other 99, or the other 99% that aren't unique enough to be bottled individually, they're pulled, married with those other 200 to 300 barrels to go and make old number 7 Angelo and Jack. And I told you a little earlier, no 2 barrels make the same whiskey. Each barrel is going to be unique, so each barrel of single barrel whiskey is going to be unique in its own right. You're going to get on average about 240 bottles out of a barrel. So once those 240 bottles are gone out of that barrel, that whiskey's gone forever. You'll never be able to duplicate it completely. Told you about the staves. So here's one of the keys. If you'll look at a single barrel bottle, around the neck label, there's 3 things that identify where it came from. There's a RIC number, a barrel number, and a bottling date. So if you love that particular bottle of whiskey after you've opened it up and tasted it, look at the barrel number on that neck label. Go back to the same liquor store that you bought that bottle from, find another bottle with the same barrel number on it, the same whiskey, because it came from the same barrel. If it does have a different barrel number on it, it's not going to be the same whiskey. It may be similar in character, but it'll never taste exactly the same because it came from a different barrel. Because about 70% of the flavor come from the barrel. And because each barrel is unique, you're never going to have two that have the exact same character. We have single barrel select. Whatever comes out of the barrel at, we're going to dilute it to 94 proof, then we're going to put it into the bottle. The single barrel proof, whatever comes out of the barrel at, that's what it gets bottled at. So this one right here, if you'd like to know the proof now or take a sip before I tell you, however you want to do it.
I saw it on the bottle in the gift shop, and it's a 65% alcohol.
Well, each different barrel is going to give you a different proof. This one right here, the flavor's just exploded.
Yeah.
That's usually the way I describe it. So this one that you're trying right here is 131.5 proof. So is that 65.75% alcohol by volume, I think is it.
And that's a wrap here in Lynchburg, Tennessee. We had an amazing tour. I'm so very grateful that we were able to film during the tour so that if you can't make it out to Lynchburg, you can really understand the immense history and just amazing stories that come out of this distillery, the oldest distillery in the United States. Our tour guide Angelo was amazing. And the best part, at the very end, we got to meet Master Distiller Chris, which was really great. And we bought a bottle of his barrel proof whiskey as the bottle that we're taking home. So with that, like, subscribe, and comment down below, because this has been an absolutely amazing day in Lynchburg, Tennessee.